"Keep that tattooed freak away from my children." Those cruel words followed Ryan Watkins daily in Milwood. Nobody saw the decorated Marine, just his tattoos. Then flames trapped an 8-year-old girl upstairs, and Ryan ran straight into the inferno. By sunrise, 200 tattooed veterans would roll into town, catching everyone off guard. 12 years in the Marines, including 3 brutal tours in Afghanistan, had turned the small-town baseball star into someone his hometown didn't recognize or want to. The intricate tattoos covering his arms, back, and neck told a story Milwood refused to hear. Every trip to Henderson's grocery meant watching mothers steer their children away from the dangerous-looking veteran. Every morning at Carter's Diner meant sitting alone, while conversations quieted when he entered. Ryan took his coffee black, left exact change, and spoke only when necessary. "We don't need his type coaching our kids," Mayor Wilson had said when Ryan applied for the youth baseball coaching position. The word cut deeper than Ryan showed. Baseball had been his life before the Marines. The field behind Milwood Elementary was where his father had taught him to pitch before cancer took him at 42. The rejection letter arrived with a generic excuse about finding a candidate whose values better represented Milwood. Ryan folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer with all the other rejections: the security job at the high school, the county maintenance position, the community college teaching opportunity. Each one effectively saying the same thing. "Your service might have been good enough for America, but your appearance isn't good enough for us." Mrs. Abernathy next door was the exception. The 80-year-old widow, whose husband had died in Korea, left pies on his porch with notes that always ended, "Thank you for your service, young man." But one elderly neighbor's kindness couldn't erase a town's judgment. Most days, Ryan worked remotely as an IT specialist. The skills he'd gained in the military providing a living that required minimal human interaction. Nights were harder. The silence in his grandmother's old house sometimes grew so loud he'd drive 40 minutes to American Legion Post 118 in the next county, where other veterans understood the nightmares, the hypervigilance, and the memories etched permanently, not just on his skin, but in his mind. On his back, an elaborate memorial tattoo listed 4 names: Turner, Rodriguez, Wilson, and Mackenzie, his squad members who never made it home. Below their names was inked "Until Valhalla." Nobody in Milwood had ever asked what it meant. Nobody wanted to know. The screaming sirens that Tuesday afternoon caught Ryan's attention immediately. His military instincts kicked in before conscious thought. The sound of emergency meant someone needed help. He was already running toward the black smoke, rising 3 blocks away, before he fully processed what was happening. By the time he reached the Mitchells' 2-story house, flames had engulfed most of the first floor. Milwood's volunteer fire department was still connecting hoses while Amber Mitchell fought against Chief Brennan's restraining arms. "My daughter's upstairs!" she screamed, her voice raw with desperation. "Please, she's only 8. "Ma'am, we can't go in yet," Chief Brennan insisted, his face grim. "The structure is not stable." Ryan pushed through the gathering crowd. "Which room?" he demanded. Amber Mitchell stared at him, recognition flickering through her panic. The tattooed veteran everyone whispered about. She hesitated only a second. "Second floor? East side? Purple curtains," she said, her voice breaking. "Please." Without a word, Ryan stripped off his outer shirt, wrapped it around his face, and ran toward the burning house. "Watkins! God damn it, stop!" Chief Brennan shouted, but Ryan was already through the front door. The heat inside hit him like a physical blow. Smoke burned his eyes and throat as he dropped low, crawling beneath the worst of it. The stairs were partially engulfed, flames licking at the banister. Ryan took them 3 at a time, ignoring the searing pain as embers landed on his exposed arms and shoulders. The second floor was a maze of smoke. "Lily," he called out, his voice muffled through the shirt. A weak cough answered from the end of the hall. Ryan found her huddled under her bed, her small body curled into a tight ball, paralyzed with fear. "I'm getting you out," he said, not wasting words. "Hold on to me, and don't let go." He scooped her up, her face against his chest, her eyes closed. The return journey was worse. Part of the staircase had collapsed, forcing Ryan to jump the gap, with Lily clutched tightly against him. Pain exploded across his back as falling debris struck him, but Marine training kicked in. Pain was information, not an obstacle. The mission was getting Lily out alive. When he finally burst through the front door, his skin was blistering from heat and burns. His shirt burned away in places, revealing the full tapestry of tattoos across his torso and the fresh wounds now marking his skin. For a moment, Milwood saw more of Ryan Watkins than they ever had before, both physically and metaphorically. Amber Mitchell ran forward with a cry, taking her daughter from his arms. The paramedics rushed to treat both Lily and Ryan, whose adrenaline was fading fast, revealing the extent of his injuries. "Second-degree burns on the back and shoulders," one paramedic murmured. "You need the hospital." "I'm fine," Ryan insisted, though the pain was becoming harder to ignore. Chief Brennan approached, his mouth set in a hard line. "That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen." "She needed help," Ryan said simply, as if that explained everything. As the ambulance took Lily and her mother to be checked for smoke inhalation, Ryan refused transport, despite the paramedics' insistence. He'd had worse in Afghanistan. Much worse. Walking home, he caught the stares and whispers that followed him. "Did you see? All those tattoos?" He ran right in without thinking twice. "What are those names on his back?" For once, the whispers held something besides judgment. But Ryan was too tired to care. 24 hours from now, whispers would be the least of Milwood's surprises. The Milwood Gazette ran the story the next morning, complete with a cell phone photo of Ryan emerging from the flames with Lily in his arms. For once, reporter Bill Simmons didn't describe Ryan as heavily tattooed in the first paragraph, though he did mention the decorated Marine veteran whose combat experience may have prepared him for yesterday's heroic rescue. Ryan barely saw the newspaper. He spent the morning applying burn cream to his back and shoulders, gritting his teeth against the pain. He'd just made coffee when the first rumble of engines reached his ears. The sound was unmistakable to any Marine. Motorcycles, dozens of them, growing louder by the second. Looking out his window, Ryan saw the first riders turning onto his street. Not just any motorcycles. These were ridden by men and women in leather vests with military patches. Veterans. Their exposed arms, necks, and hands bearing ink similar to his own. More bikes appeared until the street was lined with them. Ryan counted at least 50 before he stopped counting. Neighbors peered from windows and porches as the riders dismounted. A tall man with iron-gray hair and the ramrod-straight posture of career military approached Ryan's door. Before he could knock, Ryan stepped onto his porch. "Sergeant Watkins?" the man asked, his weathered face breaking into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Colonel James Hardin, retired, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines." Ryan straightened automatically. "Yes, sir." "At ease, Marine," Hardin said. "This isn't an inspection?" "What is it then?" Ryan asked, eyeing the gathering veterans spreading out along his street. "Word travels fast in our community," Hardin explained. "We heard what you did yesterday, and we heard how this town's been treating one of our own." He gestured to the other veterans. "Every person here has served. Every person here carries ink that tells their story, and every one of us is sick to death of civilians judging what they don't understand." A younger veteran approached, his prosthetic leg visible beneath his shorts. "Sir, the local post confirmed they're joining us. ETA 30 minutes. Ryan shook his head. "I don't want trouble. I'm just trying to live quietly." "No trouble," Hardin assured him, though something in his eyes suggested he wouldn't mind a little. But it's time Milwood learned what those tattoos really mean. He tapped his own chest, exactly where Ryan's memorial piece began. "You're carrying fallen brothers with you, aren't you?" Before Ryan could answer, more vehicles arrived, trucks and cars with military and veteran plates. A man in his 40s approached, extending his hand to Ryan. "Mike Dawson, VFW, Post Commander from Riverside. We've been trying to get you to join us for 2 years." "Not much point," Ryan replied. "Milwood doesn't have a post." "Maybe it should," Dawson said meaningfully. "Lots of vets here hiding in plain sight because this town makes them feel unwelcome. That changes today." Ryan looked confused. "What exactly are you all planning?" Colonel Hardin's smile was grim. "Education, Sergeant. The kind that sticks." By noon, Milwood Park had transformed. Veterans had set up tents and booths, displayed flags from all military branches, and erected a temporary memorial wall honoring fallen service members. The veterans of foreign wars and American Legion had brought mobile resource centers offering information about benefits and services. But the centerpiece, the display stopping Milwood residents in their tracks, was the Stories Behind Our Ink exhibition. Veterans stood ready to explain their tattoos, from the memorial pieces honoring fallen comrades to the unit insignias, battle maps, and meaningful dates inked permanently into their skin. Colonel Hardin had somehow convinced or perhaps intimidated town officials into supporting the impromptu event. Mayor Wilson scurried about, proclaiming it an official Veterans Appreciation Day, though his discomfort was obvious whenever he came near a heavily tattooed vet. "Convenient timing," Ryan muttered to Hardin, watching the mayor shake hands with a Vietnam veteran whose arms were sleeved in ink. "Nothing like a little public pressure," Hardin agreed. "Hard to keep treating veterans like outcasts when there's 100 of us standing in your park." Fire Chief Brennan arrived with his crew, along with Amber and Lily Mitchell. The little girl spotted Ryan immediately and ran to him. "Mr. Watkins," she called, wrapping her arms around his waist. "The doctor said I'm all better. Just a little smoke in my lungs, but it's gone now." Ryan knelt carefully, his burned back protesting. "Good to hear, kiddo. Mom says you're a real hero, like in the movies." "Your mom's too kind," Ryan said, uncomfortable with the praise. Lily looked at the tattoos visible on his arms with undisguised curiosity. "Your pictures are really cool. The eagle is my favorite. And the names on your back, are those your friends?" The question, so innocent and direct, momentarily stunned Ryan. No one in Milwood had ever simply asked. "Yeah," he said quietly. "They were my friends. They didn't make it home from Afghanistan." Lily touched the names gently. "So you keep them with you forever?" "That's exactly right." Ryan hadn't noticed the small crowd gathering around them, listening. Among them was Coach Bennett, who had gotten the baseball position instead of Ryan. "I didn't know," Bennett said, his face flushed with something like shame. "About the names, about what they meant." "You never asked," Ryan replied, not unkindly. As the afternoon progressed, the park filled with Milwood residents cautiously approaching the veterans, asking questions they'd never dared to ask before. Children were especially curious, their natural openness unhindered by the prejudices their parents had cultivated. Ryan found himself surrounded by people who'd previously crossed the street to avoid him, now listening intently as he explained each piece of his ink. The Marine Corps emblem, the memorial names, the battle map of his first firefight in Helmand Province, the small autism awareness ribbon for his younger brother. "Wait, you have a brother with autism?" asked Mrs. Peterson, whose son Ryan had tried to help at the grocery store once, only to be told sharply, "Stay away from my child." "Yes, ma'am. Lives with my aunt in Columbus. That's why I recognized the signs in your son last year." Mrs. Peterson's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry. I just assumed—" She trailed off, unable to finish. "That's the problem with assumptions," Ryan said. "They don't leave room for the truth." As evening approached, Colonel Hardin called for the crowd's attention. The veterans gathered behind him, forming a wall of solidarity that Milwood couldn't ignore. "Today, we've shown you the stories behind our ink," Hardin began, his voice carrying across the park. "Tattoos that honor fallen brothers and sisters, commemorate battles fought, and remember promises made. But there's one story you need to hear directly." He motioned to Ryan, who reluctantly stepped forward. "The man standing before you isn't just a decorated Marine who served 3 combat tours. He isn't just someone who risked his life yesterday to save a child." Hardin's eyes swept over the crowd, his expression hard. "Sergeant Ryan Watkins is the recipient of a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star with Combat V for Valor. While under heavy enemy fire, he carried 3 wounded Marines to safety before being severely wounded himself." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Those tattoos you've been judging, each one tells part of that story. The names on his back, Marines who died beside him when their vehicle hit an IED. That flag on his shoulder, carried in his pocket through every mission." Mayor Wilson stepped forward, visibly uncomfortable but clearly seeing the political necessity of the moment. "On behalf of Milwood, I want to extend our deepest appreciation to Sergeant Watkins and all veterans present today. It seems we've been less than welcoming." He cleared his throat. "I believe there was some misunderstanding about the youth baseball coaching position." "Save it," Hardin interrupted. "We're not here for hollow apologies. We're here because communities across America are quick to say, 'Thank you for your service,' while judging the very men and women who provided that service." He looked directly at the mayor. "Actions matter more than words." As darkness fell, the veterans organized a solemn ceremony. Each one with a memorial tattoo read aloud the names they carried, explaining when and how these brothers and sisters in arms had fallen. For each name, a candle was placed on the temporary memorial wall. When Ryan's turn came, his voice remained steady. Lance Corporal Michael Turner, Staff Sergeant Carlos Rodriguez, Corporal James Wilson, Lance Corporal David McKenzie. October 14th, 2009. Helmand Province. Our vehicle hit an IED. I was the only survivor. The simplicity of his words carried more impact than any elaborate telling could have. After the ceremony, as people began to disperse, Amber Mitchell approached with Lily. "We're having a small gathering next weekend," she said, "to thank everyone who helped during the fire. We'd love for you to come." "I'll be there," Ryan promised. As he walked home that night, surrounded by Colonel Hardin and several other veterans who had appointed themselves his unofficial security detail, Ryan noticed something different about his street. Neighbors who had previously avoided eye contact now nodded in greeting. Porch lights remained on as he passed. "They'll forget again," Ryan said quietly to Hardin. "Once you all leave, it'll go back to the way it was." "That's why we're not all leaving," Hardin replied. "You've got 20 veterans within 30 miles who are tired of hiding. Time to establish a proper VFW post in Milwood with you as its cornerstone." Ryan looked skeptical. "One day doesn't change years of prejudice." "No," Hardin agreed, "but it's a start. And we'll be back in force for every 4th of July, Memorial Day, and Veterans Day, until this town understands that the ink on our skin doesn't define us. But it does. Tell a story they need to hear." 6 months later, Milwood had changed in ways both obvious and subtle. The newly established Veterans of Foreign Wars, Post 4517, met twice monthly in the community center with Ryan Watkins as its quartermaster. Each meeting included an open invitation for townsfolk to learn about veteran issues and understand the stories behind their tattoos. Mayor Wilson, sensing which way the political wind blew, had made veteran outreach a cornerstone of his re-election campaign. The baseball league had created a special coaching position for Ryan, focusing on kids with special needs like his younger brother. On a crisp spring morning, Ryan walked to Henderson's grocery, no longer avoiding eye contact with those he passed. Inside, Mr. Henderson himself nodded from behind the counter. "Morning, Sergeant Watkins. Coffee's fresh." "Thanks," Ryan replied, still getting used to the new normal. As he walked the aisles, he noticed a young man stocking shelves, his movements methodical and precise. The sleeves of his uniform were rolled up, revealing tattoos similar to Ryan's own. Military in nature, carefully inked with meaning behind each symbol. "Afghanistan or Iraq?" Ryan asked quietly. The young man looked up, surprise and recognition crossing his face. "Afghanistan, 2017 to 2019, you? Same place, earlier war." Ryan extended his hand. "Ryan Watkins, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines." James Cooper, 10th Mountain Division. They shook hands with the mutual understanding that only veterans share. "Heard this town's becoming a good place for vets." "Getting there," Ryan said. "Still a work in progress." "Aren't we all?" Cooper replied with a half smile. "You're the guy who ran into the fire last year." Ryan nodded. "Right place, right time." "That's not what Colonel Hardin says. He's been recruiting vets to move here, says Milwood is becoming a model for how communities should treat returned service members." Before Ryan could respond, Lily Mitchell bounded down the aisle, her mother following behind. "Coach Ryan," Lily called out, "Mom says I can join your baseball team this year. Are you still going to teach us about the special ribbon for people like your brother?" "That's the plan," Ryan confirmed, nodding a greeting to Amber. "We're having a barbecue this weekend," Amber said. "Just a few neighbors and friends. We'd love for you to come. She glanced at Cooper. Both of you, if you're free. As they left the store, Cooper gave Ryan a questioning look. That happened a lot now. The invitations, more than it used to. Fire changed some minds, Ryan admitted. Veterans showing up in force changed more. And the tattoos, people still stare. Ryan considered the question. They still look, but now they ask instead of judge, most of them. Anyway, later that day, as Ryan coached his special needs baseball team, he noticed Mayor Wilson watching from the bleachers. After practice, the mayor approached, looking uncharacteristically humble. "Got a minute, Sergeant Watkins?" "What can I do for you, Mayor?" Wilson hesitated. "The town council has approved a permanent veterans memorial, something more substantial than the temporary wall from last year's event." He handed Ryan a folder containing design concepts. "We'd like your input as the VFW representative." Ryan examined the designs. "Looks good. I'll bring it to our next meeting." "There's something else," Wilson said, rolling up his sleeve to reveal a small, fresh tattoo, a military insignia. "My father served in Vietnam. Never talked about it. After he died, I found his medals, his discharge papers. I realized I never really knew that part of him." Ryan looked at the simple ink design. Not elaborate, but meaningful. "Good work," he said. "Who did it?" "That Marine who works at the tattoo shop in Riverside. Cooper recommended him." Wilson looked at his arm almost wonderingly. "I think I understand a little better now. Why you all carry these marks? It's about remembering, isn't it? About honoring." "Among other things," Ryan acknowledged. On Memorial Day, the new monument was dedicated in Milwood Park. Veterans from across the state attended, many bearing tattoos that told stories of service, sacrifice, and brotherhood. The polished granite wall listed the names of local veterans who had served, with a special section honoring those who never returned. Ryan stood at the podium looking out at the gathered crowd. There were familiar faces from town, now friendly instead of fearful. Veterans from that first gathering had returned, many having moved to the area, drawn by the growing community of understanding. Lily Mitchell sat with her mother wearing a team cap from Ryan's baseball program. "1 year ago," Ryan began, "I was invisible in my hometown. The tattoos that tell my story, that carry the memory of friends I lost and battles I survived, made me a stranger here." He looked around at the community that had learned to see beyond skin-deep assumptions. "I was just as guilty," he continued. "I assumed you'd never understand, so I stopped trying to explain. We built walls between us, you judging my appearance, me judging your judgment." He rested his hand on the memorial wall beside him. "The names carved in stone here deserve better than our silence. The stories inked on our skin deserve to be told and heard. Not because they make us heroes, most of us were just doing our jobs, but because they connect us to each other, to our shared humanity." As Ryan concluded his speech, the afternoon sun glinted off the memorial wall, casting reflections across the faces of those gathered, tattooed and not, veterans and civilians, united in a moment that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Lily Mitchell approached him, her expression serious beyond her 9 years. "I told my mom that when I grow up, I want a tattoo like yours. Not the big ones, but maybe the ribbon for your brother. Is that okay?" Ryan smiled. "That's a conversation for you and your mom many years from now." Lily nodded solemnly. Mom says sometimes the most important things aren't visible at all. They're in here. She touched her chest above her heart. But she also said sometimes putting them on the outside helps people understand better. Your mom's a wise woman, Ryan replied. As he walked home that evening, Ryan passed neighbors who called him by name, nodded greetings, or stopped to chat about the upcoming baseball tournament. The tattooed Marine who had once been invisible was now woven into the fabric of Milwood as permanently as the ink embedded in his skin.